Well, John, some news just in, actually. We've just been told that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and several top Pentagon leaders have become the latest to go into quarantine after being exposed to the virus. That's the latest from an official there. We do know that Donald Trump is expected to give an address to the nation, another address to the nation later on today, though I have to say many people are still reeling from the one he gave last night. And this sentiment that he's putting out, that you shouldn't be afraid of COVID, he says, that you have to face up to it, that if I can get over it, then anybody can get over it. Of course, Donald Trump isn't just anybody. One of the things that struck us, and we've met families who've lost loved ones to COVID over the past few months, is that many of them told us that when they turned up to hospital, they were often told to go back home until their symptoms became more severe, until they were in real trouble. Of course, the minute Donald Trump began to feel symptoms, he was immediately whisked off to a private military hospital attended by dozens of doctors and given medications from the outset that most people can only expect to get as a last resort. Like a scene more reminiscent of a Hollywood movie, the superhero president touches down on the White House lawn. Having faced his demons, Captain COVID returns, triumphant to save the nation. That's the White House version, at least.
How are you feeling?
But left on the cutting room floor was the defining image of the moment, perhaps his presidency. He ascended the White House steps and, contagious with a deadly virus, removed his mask. For a photo op that he hoped would reframe this sorry saga of COVID chaos and recast him as the all-powerful and brave president.
And I learned so much about coronavirus. And one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it.
So says the man who had at least a dozen doctors attending him in a private suite and was administered medication that many Americans could not afford or even access. And what of the 210,000 who have already died from COVID-19?
For President Trump to say, don't be afraid of COVID, don't let it dominate your life. There are children who don't have parents now because of this virus.
Reshooting the scene for his own ad. I hold rallies, and I tell you to ignore masks, and I rip mine off as I vanquish the virus because I am a leader. Fear not, COVID. What a bunch of bullshit.
To hear the president, you'd think the virus was behind him, not that he's only 5 days into his diagnosis. Even his own doctor, who's been determined to paint a rosy picture of the president's health, admitted yesterday he wasn't out of the woods yet.
We're in a bit of uncharted territory when it comes to a patient that received the therapies he has so early in the course. So we're looking to this weekend. If we can get through to Monday with him remaining the same or improving, better yet, then we will all take that final deep sigh of relief.
But there's no sigh of relief among the growing number of those surrounding the president who've contracted the virus, thanks to the administration's cavalier attitude to COVID-19. Now including his press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, and 2 of her staff, the president's personal assistant, his campaign manager, current and former senior aides Hope Hicks and Kellyanne Conway, as well as close advisor Chris Christie. At least 3 White House reporters and an unconfirmed number of staffers. In addition, 3 Republican senators, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, 2 religious officials who attended Trump events, and at least 11 debate staff in Cleveland. His Democratic presidential rival Joe Biden was asked last night if the president should take the blame for his predicament.
Some polls said 65% of Americans think the president bears some responsibility for contracting this virus. Do you agree?
Anybody who contracts the virus by essentially saying masks don't matter, social distancing doesn't matter, I think is responsible for what happens to them.
No humility from Donald Trump, though. He says his packed, maskless rallies were almost a requirement of his presidency.
As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. Nobody that's a leader would not do what I did. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay.
Implying that the minute he gets a green light, or perhaps even before, he'll go out and do exactly the same again. Well, the president has tweeted today that he plans to attend the debate on October the 15th, the second presidential debate versus Joe Biden, which would be 2 weeks only to the day when we're told, at least, that he first experienced COVID symptoms. So the bare minimum that we would expect for him to be isolating. But we know, don't we, that the president is desperate to get back to work and downplay the virus, incredibly again comparing it to the seasonal flu, which incidentally in the last season killed in the upper reaches just 62,000 Americans compared to the 210,000 that have died from COVID. And remember, this is a disease that is still today infecting 40,000 Americans a day.
Joining us now from Michigan is Dr. Rob Davidson, who is an emergency physician who is treating COVID patients in the hospital where he works. He's also executive director of the Committee to Protect Medicine and Medicare, which lobbies elected officials to support a universal healthcare system. Dr. Davidson, thank you for joining us. One of the many things that the president has said in coming out is, don't trust the scientists, trust me. What is the president doing to the American understanding of the COVID outbreak?
Well, it feels like he's doing exactly what he's been doing from the very beginning, unfortunately. And as we know from tapes uncovered in the very beginning, he knew this was a very serious disease that had a high chance of killing many people, and he still hid those facts. And now that he has been a patient, one thought he might be humbled just a bit. You could tell when he was at the White House last night, he was still showing signs of being short of breath. I don't think he's fully recovered yet. I wish him well. But, you know, in coming out of the hospital early and in claiming victory and then in denying the science and telling people, don't be afraid, don't listen to scientists, he's just making my life and the lives of doctors across this country so much more difficult.
He apparently had a sort of remarkable cocktail of drugs to be treated with right from the beginning. And I'm just wondering, if your patients got the same drugs, would they be in the same state he's in, or is he just lucky?
Well, we don't know. He did get a Regeneron antibody cocktail. That is an experimental drug. It is only through compassionate use. And in the U.S., that means it's being studied in research trials. And if there's a patient that is critically ill and their doctors think they may benefit and they've tried everything else, they can get that drug. It does not appear the president was in that position, but I believe he wanted it. His doctors wanted it, so he got that drug. We don't even know how much that would cost, but it would be well beyond the people that I take care of that are uninsured and the millions of Americans without insurance. He also got remdesivir, an antiviral. That's a 5-day course, which is definitely available under an emergency use authorization, again, not fully approved. Neither of these drugs have shown clinical benefit in clinical trials. Regeneron has shown viral load to decrease. We don't know if it makes people better faster. We don't know if people die at a lower rate. The one drug he did receive that my patients received yesterday, receive all along if they get admitted, was dexamethasone, a drug that was approved in the United States in 1958. It cost pennies. It is the only drug that's been studied that does show a reduction in hospitalization.